Alrighty, as I had mentioned today, thank you for joining us for the CNAS Scholars Rise information session. My name is Walker Woodard, and I'm a CNAS Scholars peer mentor.
My name is Saba, and I'm also a CNAS Scholars peer mentor.
And today we're going to walk you through the logistics of Find Rise, give you suggestions on, how to approach it, filling out the application, finding a faculty member, and what to look forward to when you're potentially a part of the program. And I myself have been a part of Rise for 2 years. I did it for 2019 and 2021. And Saba, if you want to talk about your research experience.
Yes, I didn't do RISE, but I was heavily involved in research in my freshman and sophomore years. So the way that I got into research is actually pretty similar to RISE. And of course, there's a lot of overlap.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but we will also have a Q&A at the end of the session. So if we don't answer them in regards to time during the workshop, definitely stay till the end and we'll answer them as they come up. Thank you.
All right, so just to get started, we wanted to ask you all a question as an icebreaker. And that question is, how do you think undergraduate research will impact your future career? There's one more clip, Walker. There we go. Feel free to unmute yourself or, answer in the chat, anything. Walker, how do you think your undergraduate research experience impacted your career?
Yeah, well, personally, I feel there's a lot of transferable skills and you get to, think critically, you get to have better communication skills, you get to meet people in your lab from different backgrounds, like whether they're graduate students or postdocs, and receive a lot of mentorship. And you can apply that to any field you're interested in, whether you want to do research as your actual career after undergraduate, or want to go into medical or academia or any kind of work such as that.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I did undergraduate research straight into entering college, and I think my time in research really helped me like kind of formulate like, oh, what do I want to do in a future career? And it gave me a wider scope of what science is even like and what sort of careers are available for me. I got a private message that said, gaining lab experience and skills. Yes, definitely. That is a very big part of being part of undergraduate research. All right.
Perfect.
Well, thank you for
Thank you.
your responses, everyone.
And we'll have one more question for you, and I won't be as kind as Saba. I'm not going to provide an image of it, but why should you get involved with research? What's the benefits, the outcome? What do you all want to gain from this? And being a part of Rise in the long term. Find personal interests. Thank you. Do something that intrigues you. Exactly. That's a great one. Very meaningful, right? Your personal interests as well. Just doing something that you find that is very impactful and you enjoy doing. Those are awesome answers. Thank both of you. Another answer, develop professional connections. Awesome. I agree. I always receive like opportunities for research, whether that's from my lab mates or from UCR in general, or even like, for example, the NSF, like National Science Foundation. There's so many opportunities out there, and this could be a great like foot in the door to be able to like start learning about them. Awesome. Thank you. Two of those are direct messages, but also thank you who sent it to the overall chat. And these are just some general other ones. Like I said, there's a lot of transferable skills. So even if you're not someone who wants to do like wet lab research or even like quantitative research in the future, you can still gain a lot of skills such as like reasoning, listening, understanding, communication. Like I said, that's really important because as you all will learn, like becoming involved with research, you have to communicate with your graduate student, you have to communicate with your faculty member, you have to communicate with your lab mates. If they're helping you, you're helping someone else. So there's a lot that goes into it, but you really gain a lot out of it as well.
All right. Now, this is just an overview of what this info session is going to go over. So, of course, we will be going over an overview of the Research in Science and Engineering program, aka RISE, for this upcoming 2022 summer. We'll be talking about benefits and expectations for this program, what it means to be a competitive applicant, how to discover your research topic and faculty mentor, how to create your proposal, what the application process is even like, and of course, a Q&A section at the end.
Okay. And now to start off, talking about an overview of the RISE program. RISE is an umbrella term in a way. So there's a lot of different programs that fall underneath RISE, such as Bio 20. This workshop isn't specifically for students who taken Bio 20, but if you have, you also are able to participate in this program, which is also known as SALSA, which is basically expanding upon your experience in Bio 20 and doing research in Campbell Hall, in which if you took Bio 20 in person, that's where you most likely had your class, and doing group projects and just getting more skills in undergraduate research. The one in the middle is referred to as STEM, and you don't have to worry about too much of that because that's for your transfer students. It's called B2B. So that's something that only transfer students are able to partake in, but they will also be in RISE. So you meet a lot of people from different backgrounds in the program. And the last one for this workshop specifically, we're going to talk about the LC, other known as CNAS scholars, and freshmen and sophomore fall underneath this category, in which you will find a faculty member and apply to be a part of RISE and then conduct research with that faculty member throughout the summer.
All right, so pictured here are two LC RISE scholars from 2019, and each of these students actually completed the RISE program and are currently featured on the CNAS Scholar Spotlight part of the website. Both of these people learned a lot from their research experience, and I want to take this opportunity to also talk about my research experience and, of course, Walker's research experience. So I worked in a biophysics lab for 2 years, and I mainly worked a lot in protein manipulation and CRISPR-Cas9 modification. So very exciting projects for me, at least. And I got to learn so much from my research lab. I learned a lot of transferable skills, as we've kind of mentioned before. I got to conduct a lot of advanced lab techniques and really just learn what it's like to conduct research and even just be a scientist. Walker, you mentioned that you've been part of RISE for 2 years, so would you mind sharing your experience?
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, Saba. So I joined an undergraduate research lab during the end of my first year. So right around the time you all went to, start getting involved. And my lab was in the UCR School of Medicine, and I researched a biomedical topic, a specific kind of autism called Fragile X syndrome. And I participated in the 2019 RISE through just like applying directly for the RISE application. And I was able to conduct my research project, and I was actually able to continue in that lab. So I conducted that project and other projects throughout the rest of my college experience. And then I also participated in 2021, so this previous summer, and I did that one through something called an REU. So it's like a research opportunity in a other faculty members lab where you just join for the summer and you don't like stay in the lab. It's just like to gain experiences in a different area. And for that one, I actually also worked with CRISPR-Cas9 just because it's a very new form of technology and a lot of good like skills can be and different impacts can really be used by learning that technique. So like I said, you gain a lot of different experiences in research, and overall it really made my college experience a lot more fun, and I really got to see my contributions and really like see the impact of my work. And now, so for the research in science and engineering program, it can feel a little abstract. So we want to break it down to you all. So what is RISE? It's a 10-week paid undergraduate research experience. And I like to really emphasize paid because a lot of students conduct research on campus because we're a research institution, but not many are paid. So we really like to, make sure you are aware of that because it's a great benefit from being a part of the LC throughout your entire first year and being able to participate in this program. And it's essentially designed to prepare you for like graduate or professional study. And you don't have to go strictly into research. It's supposed to help you become a better professional and just know the different paths out there, which helped me a lot because when I came to research lab, I wanted to be a physician assistant, but just learning all the different, tools and opportunities in research. Now I'm more interested in like biotech and the different, tools to improve the healthcare and that kind of dynamic. So it doesn't have to be the same situation for you, but it just, keep your eyes out there and explore as much as possible. And the program also has multiple seminars and workshops aimed to better prepare you as scientists and professionals. So The overall objectives of RISE are, as I said, to prepare you all for graduate school, via research, workshops, in any field that you're interested in, assist you all in realizing your academic and graduate potential. So a lot of students may not think about graduate school yet or don't know what it looks like to, take or go along that path. So it's really helpful in breaking that down. So you just won't only be doing research. There's a lot of workshops and seminars to help you, as an individual as well. And it offers you a firsthand exposure to UCR graduate opportunities. So whether you want to go on to graduate schools at UCR or other like UC campuses, it helps you see what's out there and learn more about it. Then of course you get to know a faculty member and potentially maybe continue in the lab, have a letter of rec further down the line, and just continue on that relationship. And lastly, you get to be an intern in their lab because RISE is considered like a paid internship. So they get a lot of help from having you in there during the summer.
All right. So what are the benefits of RISE? I can tell you right now, there are many, many benefits to being a part of RISE. One of the most obvious benefits, as Walker has mentioned, is that our scholars get to conduct research at an undergraduate level and get paid to do it. As he mentioned before, generally when you do research outside of programs like RISE, it's usually not paid or, even on a volunteer basis, which is what I did. However, RISE, of course, gives you a stipend of $5,000 over the summer, over that 10-week period. I believe it is given out in 2 chunks as well. So a very, very obvious benefit of being part of RISE. Faculty members also get a stipend to conduct the research proposal that you both work on, around $500 for supplies. So of course, there's an incentive for those faculty mentors as well to be part of RISE, right? For students interested in applying to graduate school, which I'm sure is a lot of people here, undergraduate research will make you a more competitive applicant and assist you in the future. This program also helps scholars build, a relationship with their UCR faculty mentor, who in turn can become a long-term mentor and someone who can write a strong letter of rec. I can attest to this. My faculty mentor that I worked with in research has definitely a mentor of mine who has taught me a lot, even after I've left his lab. And of course, it's someone that I am going to get a strong letter of rec from. In RISE, you get to work directly with a lot of groups of people to hone your presentation and research skills, including STEM peer mentors, graduate students, and of course, your faculty mentor. Scholars also attend workshops while a part of this RISE program for 10 weeks. And some of these workshops include topics like how to write an abstract, how to apply for graduate school, studying abroad in STEM, how to apply for STEM jobs, interviewing skills, oral presentation skills, and so on and so forth. Finally, there is a symposium at the end of the program, which is a great opportunity to either have an oral presentation or a poster board to present on all of the work that you did with your lab. Presenting at the symposium is a really, really great opportunity to really sharpen those public speaking skills because you work with those STEM peer mentors, faculty, and your lab to make sure that your presentation is pristine. Next slide.
Alrighty, and now let's tackle some of the expectations of RISE because we want it to be, as simplified as possible. So we don't want there to be any surprises. So you all, as potential participants, you would be expected to work 40 hours a week, and this ranges from, for an example, 8 to 5 p.m. And it could be like 5 days, like the 5 weekdays during the summer of the 10-week program. And the big thing with this as well is you have to understand you have to be flexible as well with research. So for example, we talked about communication. If you communicate, you can't come in, for example, on a Friday because something comes up, you have to pick someone up or like a family matter. Your project doesn't stop and you're still expected to fulfill these 40 hours a week minimum. So if that means you have to come in on the weekend, or for example, one day you have to stay a lot longer, that's just how research is at times. And that's just an expectation we want to communicate with you all, just so there's no conflict during the program or anything like that, because we want to like mediate that so it's not a surprise. And then the second bullet point, living and commuting arrangements will be handled by the participants. So no on-campus housing or transportation can be provided through RISE. All of you who, partake in the program would have to arrange those. And for the third one, participants will not attend summer school or work another job during RISE. And this is really for your all best interest, because as someone who's participated in the program twice, 40 hours a week is like a lot, right? And some of you, maybe you have like part-time jobs as well with school and you work maybe upwards to hours. But if you hit 40 hours and you are doing school and you're doing research, that's just, first of all, you can't put your best effort into all of those and feel like good about it. And also like that could really strain your mental health. And we just want to like have this expectation so we can avoid anything like that. And you can really get the most out of the RISE program. And then the last one is designated program events will be mandatory to attend. As we mentioned, there's seminars, there's workshops, there's events that really are for you all to grow outside of research as professionals, as individuals, and they're really for your benefit as well. So we do mandatory them. And if you miss one, right, it's not the end of the world. You are allowed to like miss one or be a few minutes late. But if it's like a habitual thing or you actually miss more than two events, you actually receive a reduced stipend. So we want to avoid that and communicate this expectation ahead of time.
All right, so what is it that makes a competitive applicant for RISE? So generally, for the RISE program, we are mainly looking for students who just are who fulfill those requirements that we talked about before. Apologies. So students who have completed a whole year of the learning community is what we look for. One, students in good academic standing with a minimum of 3.0 GPA, and of course, students with some lab experience, either through lab courses or research with professors. So if you are interested in RISE and you're actually already in a lab, you can still apply for RISE with the current lab that you have, of course, still going through with the proposal and the application process that we'll go into more later. Some examples of lab courses that would also give you lab experience are, simple things like dynamic genome, your Chem 1A labs, your Bio 5B labs, so on and so forth.
And one other suggestion for those of you who are maybe still looking for a lab, right? Or you're trying to join a lab for RISE specifically, I always suggest starting your lab earlier than the RISE program so you can get your training completed, you can get acclimated, like get to know everyone, know what your project is entailing. And if you communicate that in your application, right, that you and your professor have came to that arrangement that you're going to start in the spring or start a few weeks before you're participating in RISE, that could really allow you to get that experience if you don't already have it as well and help you, increase your chances. Okay, so let's talk about the application process. So students must submit 3 forms by April 1st at 4 p.m. So we're very glad to see you all here, well in advance, getting prepared because it's, it can take a lot of effort and time to really join a research lab and participate in this program. That's why we have like a nice stipend for you all because we know the effort you're going to put into it. So we like to communicate everything well in advance. So the application can be found at this link. I think Saba will be able to put in the chat momentarily. And then that application is just very general information, filling out some, short free response questions. And then the actual research proposal, I believe that's going to be submitted along with the Google form as an attachment. And that's a 2 to 3 page discussion on what your project's going to be in the summer. So what you and your faculty member intend to work on. And this won't be something you work on alone. So once you find your faculty member, you can communicate this research proposal need and they'll walk you through it or have a graduate student or postdoc like assist you in that process. So you're not alone. You don't have to come up with your project idea. A lot of the time you'll be given like a small part of a project or the faculty member will help you start the project. And last one, a faculty letter. So whoever you intend on working with during the summer needs to provide a brief statement indicating that they support you being in their lab during summer 2022. And this faculty letter can be submitted via the Google form, or you can send it straight to CNAS Scholars as well if your faculty member prefers that.
All right, now let's talk about how to hone what you want to study and who you want to study with when it comes to the RISE program. So before you can submit your application, you must know who your faculty mentor is, AKA the primary investigator. Primary investigator is usually shortened to just saying PI, and this is the head researcher and professor of the lab who oversees all of the research projects going on in a lab. Of course, they also conduct research themselves. So to do this, you'll need to decide what you want to study and research faculty members with similar interests to what you want to study. You can review a lot of different faculty members' research projects, review individual research, and of course, meet with them. So just to go through a little checklist of what to do, it's important to choose a discipline or a subject that you would like to study, find a possible mentor who aligns with those interests, review this mentor's research, and finally meet with the faculty mentor and of course secure a PI for the summer. When you meet with this PI, you should pick a topic of research together with them and ask for a letter of support. Faculty letters can be submitted through the online RISE application or by email through the cnsscholars at ucr.edu email.
And one thing, just as Saba mentioned, PI stands for principal investigator, and this can be used interchangeably with faculty member, just in case you all haven't been introduced to that term yet. So discovering your discipline. These are a few things to ask yourself when you're looking to find out what you want to research, right? So why did I choose this major? For example, if you're, cell molecular bio, neuroscience, anything a physics major, mathematics and CNAS. So finding out why you chose that major and is it something you want to research further and be in a lab and be in that department with a faculty member. But also you could research something outside your major. For example, myself, I'm a biology major, but the research I conduct in the School of Medicine, that has a neuroscience focus. So I wasn't as acclimated with the background, but when you join the lab, it's usually a lot of terminology in which you wouldn't be familiar with, perhaps even if you were in the field, because they usually have a very niche study. So consider that if you want to research in your major or outside your major, both are appropriate, just whatever fits your interests. And then what STEM subjects am I interested in? For example, like I said, you could choose something else. You could do something more specific. You could do something regarding like research in health, right? You could do something like geophysics. You could do something like ecology. So there's a lot of subdisciplines within a field. So finding out what you feel would be very meaningful and impactful, because I feel that's the best thing to research, because then the time that you put in is very well worth. And then what problems do I want to solve in the world? Like I had mentioned, like you want to see an impact, and that really made research fun for me because I saw an immediate impact and I saw like what my contributions and the things we were doing, what that could really like, contribute to in the future. So that's a really nice thing to consider when you're doing research, right? Sometimes you're doing like small tasks, and just like in your courses, like small steps in the problem, like can be very tedious or very like seem challenging. But when you take like a holistic perspective, it's very worthwhile and it makes a lot more sense. And yes, once you've answered these questions, start looking for a faculty member in your chosen major or field of interest.
All right, so how do you go about finding that faculty mentor, right? That primary investigator, PI. So there are many, many different ways to identify potential mentors. And the first one that I want to introduce is to consider faculty that you're actually taking classes with or that you've taken classes with. So are there any CNS faculty you've taken a class with that you enjoyed learning from? It's important to, consider everyone that you come across, right? And I encourage you all to read some of their recent research papers that may seem interesting to you. Another way to find a faculty mentor is to browse the departmental websites for CNS departments. Um, this will generally show you what area of research every professor is in that department. And sometimes usually there is a link to their recently published research that you can go through and contemplate over. Another way to find a faculty mentor is to go to the library or search up faculty articles online. So for faculty that you don't even know yet, you might just start, or you can start with just the title of research papers. Once you find research papers linked to UCR, and if the titles look interesting, then I encourage you to read those papers. The reference libraries at the Orbach Science Library can be very helpful in finding some of those interesting publications, or of course, you can also find them online. Whenever you do find these research papers, however, I encourage you to read the full article, not just the abstract, right? Even though research publications can be really complicated to go through, it's important to immerse yourself in them. And I also recommend reading multiple research articles to really confirm that your interests align with a specific PI. It's also very important to keep an open mind with disciplines because you can find interesting research anywhere. So for me, for example, I'm a biology major, but I entered a biophysics lab, and I never really would have imagined that I would even have an interest in a biophysics lab. But of course, because I did my research and because I kept an open mind to many different kinds of labs, I got to find my opportunity, right? I personally actually did the second option on this list, which was to browse the departmental websites for CNS departments. And that's how I find my PI that I worked with. I read, I think his most recent two papers that he wrote. And I just found them really interesting. And because of, researching those papers, I decided to go in and ask for a meeting. And of course, eventually I ended up with my research opportunity. Ooh, so sorry, I missed one thing. Um, Keep in mind that your faculty's time and interests are, sparse, so keep them in consideration. You should allow yourself ample time to secure a mentor and consider more than one potential mentor, of course. As Walker mentioned before, it's important to, at least start beforehand, give yourself some time. And of course, if you can even enter a research lab beforehand and get situated, that would help you out a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Saba. And to piggyback, it's definitely, we want you all to consider multiple faculty members to do research with because it is like a time sensitive process and you have to be respectful of their time. But if they take a while to respond to you, we want you to, have other connections or interactions to potentially secure a lab you're interested in. So I myself reached out to multiple professors to do research with. So don't be discouraged if they may take a little bit of time to get back to you, or if, they're not taking undergraduates at this time, that's, normal. That's why we suggest reaching out to maybe like 3, 5 upwards more. For example, if you find a law labs you're interested in. So just keep that in mind. Okay, now when you start talking to a faculty member, when you set up this appointment or you stop by their office hours, right? What if you have a class with them or you're emailing them and giving your availability to meet and discuss the research further, show your knowledge and general interest. So as Saba mentioned, she read recent articles that the faculty member conducted and published. So that really shows that she's eager to join the lab and asking questions, right? Because they don't expect you to maybe understand everything that's talked about in the article or know like how it was achieved, but they just want to see that genuine interest. And maybe perhaps what I did, for example, was make connections to classes I've taken or topics I'm familiar with and asking them for more in depth or if that's an appropriate like a comparison or how they would frame it, right? Because faculty members, professors love talking. As we all know, they love talking about their research. So definitely ask very well-informed questions. Ask them for more reading material if they have an article they think would really benefit you, like becoming familiar with. And then once you've established this connection, ask if they can mentor you as, part of the Summer Rise program. But don't ask them if they can, you know, don't ask if you can join their lab straight off the bat, because that can seem a little forward, more like a transaction. So we want to minimize that and really show all of your general interest. Beforehand, ask for in a meeting, talk to them more, ask questions, ask for material. And then once, they're comfortable and you're comfortable, you can ask them to mentor you.
All right, so when you do get to meet a PI, then what kinds of questions and answers should you ask them, right? So generally, we want to be asking them well-informed questions. And what makes a well-informed question are these 3 bullet points that we have here. So number one, show you've read the material, at least 2 to 3 articles. So of course, as I've mentioned before, that's what I did. I will say I did not understand like a good 60% of what I read back then. However, I did still, go through the abstract, go through the methodology, the references of my previous PI's published works, and of course, try to inform myself on what this faculty mentor researches and what they're interested in. Another thing to do to ask well-informed questions is to ask for information to be expanded on and clarified. I remember when I first met my PI, that is pretty much all I did our entire meeting. And I didn't print out the paper. I had it on my laptop and I was pointing to specific parts that I was confused on, but I wanted to learn more about. For example, there was like this one concept about like telomeres that I didn't understand, which is like the end parts of DNA. And I had no idea what it was back then. So I definitely asked a lot of questions. And of course, another thing to ask well-informed questions is to inquire on future research plans. As Walker has mentioned before, um, professors really love talking about their research. So this is, a golden question to ask them. And it shows that you are interested in, what they're planning on doing. And it gives you a better sense of course, whether you would align in this lab or not, if your interests are similar. Um, Another thing, of course, is also to be prepared to give a sort of elevator speech. So this is around 30 seconds to 1 minute. And basically you talk about yourself, i.e. you introduce your major, your career goals, and your professional interests. I did one when I first met my PI, and if you're interested, you can also stick around after this presentation to get more examples on what an elevator speech is like.
Perfect. Thank you, Saba. And I really like the last bullet point on this slide because I used it, for example, when I met with my faculty member, I used it as a segue to tell me about your future research plans. Oh, those are like very interesting. Like I'm actually interested in participating in this program called RISE, and I was wondering like if you would let me join your lab and help you with one of those projects because I'm very interested. So something like that, right? Once you have those connections and talk to them about the research they do in their lab, that's a great segue, right? It's a smooth transaction. It's not like awkward or anything like that. Like sometimes it can feel like very intimidating talking to a faculty member or someone in that position. So thinking ahead of like how you want the conversation to go and good transitions could like very, very helpful. And that's a good example. Okay. And now here's a sample email. So we want you all to utilize this like general structure, but we don't want you to copy this, right? Because RISE has been an ongoing program and we show this same template every year. So if you just send this exact template, faculty members have seen it, right? And they realize where it's from. But it shows a lot of great components of an email in which we'll talk about right now. So addressing the professor as such, if you have taken them in a class. So don't call a faculty member professor if you haven't had them in a class. Call them like doctor, for example, just so it's more appropriate. And then introducing yourself by your name, what you're interested in becoming involved in, the subject area, what year you are, and GPA, if you're comfortable putting in the email body, you don't have to. A lot of times on these emails, you should attach your resume. So your GPA could be on your resume, or if not, right, it's whatever you're most comfortable with. And these bullet points are examples. They're not like have the bullet points in the emails, but these are some things you can include in the email body. Maybe some of the courses you've taken related to the subject area you're interested in, or the research the faculty member is conducting, some related experiences if you've done research or perhaps volunteered in a certain area in which for like ecology or conservation, right? Maybe like planting trees or like saying how it's meaningful to you. Or for example, my research pertaining to like autism, right? I volunteered in centers focused on like the autism spectrum disorders. So any kind of that related experience, even if it's not directly research, is still helpful to know. And then what your overall goal is, maybe what you want to do in the future, maybe the kind of research you want to be involved in. So anything along those lines. And then the big part that we want to like suggest is you saying how you found their profile, whether that's on the departmental website or if you took a class with them, if they spoke about the research, bringing that up, talking about how you're interested in their work, mentioning article title that you looked at and wanted to ask more questions about, or had maybe some thoughts on, right? It's really helpful if you have like any critical thoughts, reading the discussion at the end, right? Maybe saying like, oh, like these discussions on future projects are very interesting. Have you like started implementing any of them in your lab or anything along those lines? And lastly, asking them to meet in the future and talk about it and have a, whether it's Zoom or once we return to campus, meeting them in their office if they're comfortable with that, just so you can discuss it further. And providing your availability, even though it's not in the sample email, at the bottom of the email, really helps, speed up the process just so they have all the times and they can look at it and set up a meeting quickly.
All right, so what are the components of a proposal? How do you write it? We've mentioned this before, so let's get a little more in depth with this. So usually a proposal is around 2 to 3 pages, and general components include your introduction, your research question, what your project is going to be on, the specifics of your project, i.e., what discipline it is, what is the timeline that you're planning on going through with, a conclusion, and references. So students must write their proposal with their PI, and of course, you should communicate with them and decide what you will be researching and how.
All right, and now we're gonna go through the general application. This is a paper version, so you'll see this all in the Google form that Saba already put in the chat, but it's basically the identical questions, and this is an overview for what you'll be filling out.
So first and foremost, you just go through some general information. So applicant information includes your name, your first name, your last name, what your address will be, and your phone number. And after that, we go into academic information. So you have to fill out what your major is, how many units you've completed, and what courses you have completed. What courses you've completed doesn't count against you. It's just a way to make sure that you are meeting the requirements for the RISE program.
Thank you. And you all will be able to fulfill that you attended a workshop because you're visiting this workshop today. And disregard the dates on this application. This is a screenshot from last year, but everything on the Google form is updated with the appropriate dates. So you can just say you attended January 27th workshop. And then this is going to be the part in which you put in the research information. So your proposed faculty member, and then the information below that, such as their office or phone number. You don't have to ask them for that information. You can just find it on their departmental website under their faculty profile, just so they don't need to give that to you. You can just find it online. And then answering this short question, such as what is your career goal and why have you chosen this goal for your future? And it's very helpful if you give time for this. It's the only two free response questions, and they're relatively short, right? But give content. Be concise, but be very clear and try to think about it, because it is something that will help us know more about you and more about your background, what you want to achieve. And then the submission information is at the bottom. It's going to be due on Friday, April 1st, 2022 at 4 p.m. And you have to include the application page, your research proposal, and the letter of support from your faculty member. And if they're not comfortable giving it to you to put in the Google form, they can email it to CNAS Scholars. And since the Google form, you don't have to sign it. You just can click it, right? The checkbox at the end and submit it.
And finally, of course, we have the signature and date that you can fill out. This will be digitally, of course, with the Google form. So disregard the last part, which is please return to all application materials. It's all online. And application and materials will be due by 4 p.m. on April 1st. And applications are reviewed on receipt, meaning, of course, first come, first serve. The earlier that you submit an application, the more time it will be looked at, right?
And I see a question in the chat from Sophia asking, since this is due after the end of winter quarter, should we use our academic information from both fall or winter or just from fall? So as updated as possible, right? And a lot of that information was talking about the classes you completed up through winter 2022. So if that is very helpful, right? Putting in all the math classes you're taking this quarter, science courses, just so we're familiar with your coursework. And then what happens after you apply? Just be patient. So it takes time, right? We'll review these in April. So we have this workshop well ahead in time. So you have plenty of, time to make sure you can complete the whole application, find a faculty member, and your fall and winter grades are taken into consideration. So keep being amazing students, right? Don't let your academics slip. And your proposals will be reviewed and selected applicants will be notified by mid-May. And yep, thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much for attending. Are there any questions? I did receive 2 private messages, so I'll address those now. But again, thank you so much everyone for attending. The first question that I got is this info session just on the CNS Scholars faculty research part of the RISE program? I took Biology 20, so I'm also interested in the SALSA program. Yes, so mainly we were just talking about the CNS Scholars part of RISE, and this whole presentation was mainly targeted towards LC students, of course, but if you are interested in SALSA, I would love to give you more information on it later. just stick around for a bit. And Salsa, I believe, is a sub-program of RISE, so we can give you a little more information on that. Another question that I got is, do we find faculty members on the UCR website? Yes, we went over this a little bit in the presentation, but that is personally what I did. I pretty much just like went through the biology department and was like, oh, they look interesting. Oh, they look interesting. There's many different ways to find those faculty mentors though, for sure.
I received a private message as well, just indicating whether or not there was a sign-in form to record attendance. And the one good thing, right, about being on Zoom, Zoom records all that for us. So no sign-in form. Thank you all. So if you don't want to stick around for questions, or if you don't want to hear or have any questions, you're free to go at this time.
I received two more questions while we were talking. So the first one is, will we have to do any interviews? Walker, would you like to give your 2 cents on that?
Yes. So for the CNS portion of RISE, the scholars, you do not have to do an interview. I believe for the student who asked about Bio 20, even though this workshop isn't for that, SALSA does have interviews, but no, we do not have the interviews for CNS scholars.
One more question that I got is, you said some mentors may add us on to another student's proposal. Would we just make a write-up on what they are doing?
I think they were referring to, so you wouldn't be added on to another. When I said, I think they meant like another project. I said they could be added on to a project. Usually labs have multiple projects going on under like graduate students or postdocs. So you're not added onto another student's like application. That project should be unique to you, right? So there shouldn't be any like overlap between participants.
Mhm. One more question is, will this info session be posted somewhere so we can watch it again? Yes. After this, we are actually recording, as you can probably see in the top left. So this presentation will be uploaded on the CNS Scholars website. I got one more question. You can't do both CNS Scholars and DG Scholars at the same time, right? No, you definitely can. So being part of DG, Dynamic Genome, is actually one of the prerequisites to even applying for RISE, right? So it's even recommended, honestly, that if you do get Dynamic Genome, you should also apply for RISE if you are interested, because Dynamic Genome also gives you that lab experience, right? That makes you more of a competitive applicant. So yes, you can definitely do both.
Yeah, one thing that may be helpful as well, you can do, it's allowed to be a part of Dynamic Genome and then do RISE for CNAS scholars, but you can't do SALSA and CNAS scholars. So you can't do both the programs, you have to pick one or the other. And then
Sorry, I got another follow-up for the question, which was, oh, okay, cool. Can they do salsa and RISE at the same time? No. So salsa and RISE are very similar programs, and yes, you can apply to both programs. It's recommended to get those chances out there, right? However, they still are separate programs. RISE is more of a program where you find your own faculty mentors and have your own proposal, versus I believe Salsa, you get put into a group. You still work on a proposal of a project and whatnot, but it's a little bit separate because it's more linked to Dynamic Genome.
And I received a question about them not being signed in. If you're not signed into your UCR Zoom, am I still fine attendance wise? I would say just maybe direct message me that for that individual UCR email so I can note that down.
Yes.
And then
And
you have to
please
be
make sure to have your name. Of course, I see most of us have our names on there, so that works as well.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I got a couple emails messaged to me. And then another question was, do you have to be 18 to apply for RISE? I don't believe so. I think even in like educational labs, if you're not 18, you may just to be in the lab have to have like a parental form filled out, but you can still apply.
Yeah, so to work in any kind of laboratory setting, I had to do this when I was a freshman. I was 17 when I first came in. So yeah, you have to just sign up like a release form, or just like a form where you get your guardian's approval. That's it. I got another question, PM'd. Can we do MarkU Star pre-trainee summer program in RISE at the same time? I'm going to have to say no, because RISE is a long-term commitment, or not a long-term commitment, but it is a 40-hour week, right? When you do RISE, and Um, I believe those two programs will probably be in conflict with each other. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So from my experience, so sometimes there's overlap, right? I've had people in my lab who were in MarkU while I was in Rise. And the only reason you can't do both, because they are separate programs, is because, like I said, the mandatory events for Rise, you would miss too many of those because MarkU has their own mandatory events. So they were just, you wouldn't be able to participate in either program fully. So yeah, unfortunately not. Not because like a logistical thing, but more because you just would miss too much and you would receive reduced stipends.